So, check this out, people. How many people remember Toys R Us? Toys R Us was an American toy company that was founded in 1948, back in the US, right? And I guess due to bad decisions, bad business decisions, for whatever reason, they didn't move with the trend, right? They didn't bend with the trend. And because of that, they went bankrupt, right? And ever since their bankruptcy, they went out of business, supposedly, right? Because if you ask anyone in the US if they've been to a Toys R Us recently or they've seen one, most likely they will tell you that Toys R Us no longer exists. Now, here in Southeast Asia, there are more than 450 Toys R Us stores. 90 stores here in the Philippines alone. They have stores in Hong Kong, they have stores in Korea, they have stores everywhere. And right now, they're talking about building or creating 60 new stores here in Southeast Asia. And so I ask myself, how is that, right? Because we were told that Toys R Us no longer exists, that it's no longer in business. See, what people have to understand, especially people who invest or who trade and who listen to these scumbags on YouTube, that the market doesn't determine whether a business thrives or not. What determines whether a business thrives or not is whether or not they have a profit or they make profit. Now, we know that Toys R Us some years ago filed for bankruptcy because they weren't making profits. They weren't making business because of Walmart, Target, and other stores that were selling toys for a lot cheaper. And so was Amazon. So people could get toys for a lot cheaper and have it delivered to their homes, right? And so these were some of the things that caused Toys R Us to go out of business. At least that's what we were told. But considering the fact that they're thriving here in Southeast Asia, that their main office is, I believe, in Hong Kong, right? And that they're about to create 60 new stores. What does that tell you? That the market does not determine whether a business can make it or not. And so when someone tells you that a stock is going to the moon because the balance sheets tell you that they're doing well, when in reality, that's a lie. Okay, so when Moran Terence tells you that GME is a profitable company, all you have to do is research yourself and you will find that it is not a profitable company. And the $4 billion that that company has made, it has made it off the backs of everyday novice retail investors. They didn't get that money because of profits. They didn't make that money because people are going in and out of their stores and buying things. And so you have to understand, people, how the market works, how business works. The balance sheets do not determine whether a stock will go up or down. The market doesn't care about balance sheets. It doesn't give a fuck about it. Okay? What causes stocks to spike is whether or not people put their money into them and people take their money out. And while Roaring Kitty is telling you, or not telling you, but putting out memes suggesting, because that's what he's doing, that you should put your money into a stock like GME so that when you do that, the stock spikes and then he ends up selling, making millions while you hold to the moon and go broke. And so if you don't understand how it is that these people are manipulating you, when they suggest that the balance sheet is going to determine whether a stock is going to the moon, that's bullshit, because you have companies like Coca-Cola, a company who's been around for over 100 years, thriving company who will probably be around for another 100 years, and they will never go to the moon. Their stock will never go to the moon, regardless of their balance sheets, regardless of how much business they do, how much money they make. So when someone tells you that GME is going to the moon because of the balance sheets, that it's going to MOAS, the only reason a stock is going to MOAS is if people buy in and hold like idiots while others sell behind their backs. And this is why GME spikes and then it tanks again, because when it spikes, people sell. And those who hold, believing that it's going to the moon, end up losing everything, because they're invested into meme stocks. They're not invested into companies that are thriving. Okay. And I'm giving you guys Toys R Us as an example, that even though they didn't make it in the market, it doesn't mean that they're not a successful company. We may have been told that they're not a successful company, but all you have to do is look, all you have to do is the research, and you will see for yourself that Toys R Us has been thriving. And they also have stores in the US. There are companies that thrive without the stock market, without the NASDAQ, without the New York Stock Exchange. You have, for example, Chick-fil-A, one of the most successful fast food restaurants in the US, growing really fast, and they don't trade openly in the market. They're not a publicly traded company, and they do just fine, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so when people tell you that the market is going to determine whether a business can thrive or not, that's bullshit. Because Toys R Us filed for bankruptcy some years ago and is no longer trading publicly. The only way you can get in and out of that stock is over the counter. That's it. And so even though they are not as popular as we think they are, or as they once were, because back in the US, Toys R Us was popular. You watched it on TV, you seen the commercials. And so that's what made it popular, the fact that we saw it, the fact that we heard about it. And because we don't hear about it today, we think it's not thriving. We think it's not successful. Now, when I go to Eastwood City here in the Philippines, in Quezon City, they have a large Toys R Us store in the mall, and nothing has changed about it, other than the fact that they are moving and bending with the trend. And so, if Toys R Us can succeed without the market, what makes you believe that other stocks or other companies cannot thrive without the stock market? And why are you being told that these people, private equity, causes companies to tank, when in reality, those who deal with private equity are the ones who causing their own companies to tank, because they're the ones dealing with private equity when they don't have the money and they go and borrow the money and deal with these scumbags. If you deal with the mafia, you got to pay the mafia. And if companies want to deal with private equity, it's on them. It's not private equity who's damaging them, it's the companies who are damaging themselves. If you're broke and you don't got it like that, and you're desperate, and there's someone who can lend you the money that you need at high interest, and you know you can't pay it, you know that, and you do business with them anyway, it's on you. And the fact that these people on YouTube want to make the excuse that private equity are the ones who are causing these companies to tank is to manipulate you. Because if these companies don't want to go out of business, they don't have to deal with private equity. GME, for example, perfect example, they don't deal with private equity. It doesn't mean they're not going to make it, and it doesn't mean that they're going to make it. Because you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that that's not a profitable company. That the money they made, the $4 billion that GME has made, they didn't make that in profits. They didn't make that because people are going in and out of the stores buying things and pulling them off the shelf. They made that $4 billion off the backs of everyday novice retail investors, and GME robbed their investors. GME or GameStop took that money from everyday investors and robbed them. Okay, because GME made $4 billion off the backs of everyday investors who backed them. And then in turn, GME, Ryan Cohen, GameStop stabbed everybody in the back live on TV while Roaring Kitty was also robbing the masses, believing that his presence was going to cause GME to spike, and in return, the hedge funds, the market makers were ready. And if you think that market makers are going to allow everyday novice retail investors to take their money the way we took it some 3 or 4 years ago, do you think that you're going to walk into someone's house and rob them one time, and that the person you rob in his home is not going to be prepared the next time, waiting for you with a shotgun? You think that that's not going to happen? And so, if you believe that these hedge funds are not prepared for what we believe is to come, what they've been telling you is going to happen, the MOAS, the nonsense, then you're a fool if you believe these people, because they're going to keep playing you for a fool and taking your money, because the ones who are taking your money are not the market makers. The ones who are taking your money are these YouTubers who are pumping stocks and telling you this bullshit, these lies about AMC and GME. Every day you go on to YouTube, you see the same thumbnail. AMC is about to make people rich. GME is about to make people rich. You got New York Angelo. AMC has been confirmed. GME has been confirmed. This motherfucker, this scumbag, this piece of shit, the only one who shows up on my feed now when I type in AMC, because there aren't any more apes. The majority of apes are gone. And so if you listen to these assholes, you're going to lose your money, people. You're going to lose your money because you're putting your money in the wrong stocks. You have to do your research. If we've all done our research, and if we understand how business works and how the market works, you'll understand why Toys R Us is still in business and why it's thriving here today still, with over 450 stores and still opening more stores, not just here, but also in the US. A company doesn't have to be part of the market in order to thrive, in order to survive. Toys R Us is a perfect example. And if you who are putting your money into meme stocks because you turn on YouTube and you listen to these idiots who are lying to you, do you think Warren Buffett became rich by listening to YouTubers? Do you think he tuned into YouTube and said, let me see what the new trend is so I can buy into that nonsense? Do you think that Roaring Kitty did the same when he got rich? Do you think that he went on YouTube to see what the next trend was? Roaring Kitty was the trend. He created the trend. Do you see how it works? And that's why he sold at the top while everybody was holding to the moon. Because he manipulated you. Because Marantz Rants manipulates you. Because Tony DeNaro was manipulating you. And then he changed his tune and his narrative when things didn't go his way. And that's what these scumbags on YouTube do. They lie to you. They bullshit you. They want you to believe that GME is going to thrive because it's going to the moon, when in reality, Ryan Cohen is going to sell and cause the stock to tank all over again. That's private equity right there. Because he's robbing his investors, his everyday novice investors that are backing his company, and instead of him backing them up, he's taking their monies. He's taking the money. And so if you believe that the balance sheets determine whether or not GME is going to the moon, then they're bullshitting you, because that's not how the market works. The market doesn't care about the balance sheets. What moves the market are everyday retail investors. And every time the stock spikes, it is the CEO who sells. It is the company you're invested in who sells, not the market makers, not this bullshit where they're telling you that the market is being manipulated and that's why it's tanking. When stocks go up and down every day, that is what stocks do. They go up and they go down. And instead, they want to tell you each time AMC goes down, each time GME goes down, that's manipulation. But when other stocks go down, it's not manipulation. It's just the market is just how it works. And you see the nonsense, people? Don't believe the hype. The market doesn't determine whether a company is going to be successful or not. If a stock tanks for whatever reason, whether manipulation from the market makers, whether manipulation from everyday retail investors who tell you to hold while they sell behind your back, the way Trades did, the way Roaring Kitty did, the way the Kansas 5 did, and the way the majority of YouTubes do. This is why they have a channel. You think they're on YouTube telling you to jump into the stocks that they're into so that you can get rich or so that they can get rich? You think that's what they're doing? People, you have to understand how business works. You have to understand how scammers work. This is why scammers use AMC pumpers and GME pumpers so that they can send you a message in their comments. I just got a message today on one of these scumbags comments where I commented, and then they responded as if though it was the influencer who I left the comment for. Instead, it was a scammer asking me to call him on YouTube, rather on WhatsApp, so that he can pretend to be the influencer who I left the comment for. And so he can try to scam me. And this is why these people continue to encourage these influencers, because the majority of people who watch YouTube or who watch these influencers who believe are real people when in reality they're not real people. These people, the majority of people who watch these scumbags on YouTube are bots. No faces, no content, and no subscribers. And they're the ones who encourage these people. They encourage them to continue the nonsense so they can in turn scam people outside of YouTube, those who have no knowledge of how things work. Because no influencer is going to give you his WhatsApp phone number so you can contact them. Because most of the time, these people don't even call or show their face. And I deal with them all the time. I deal with scumbags, with scammers all the time. I communicate with these people every day. And this is why I know what I'm talking about. And so you have to understand, people, how the market works. You have to understand this. The market does not determine whether a business is going to be successful or not. The market doesn't determine that. Chick-fil-A is not part of the market. Coca-Cola is, and it will always be successful regardless of what the market does. Toys R Us is a perfect example. They're no longer trading in the New York Stock Exchange, in the NASDAQ. They supposedly went out of business, but still have been here for decades. Because when a company can't make it back home in the US, they do what they've been doing for decades. They go to China, they go to Mexico, they come to Southeast Asia, because the US makes it impossible for companies, big companies especially, to succeed. And they always blame market makers, manipulators, but they don't blame the people who actually are the ones causing these businesses to tank, because America makes it very impossible for someone to own a business. I know, because I'm a business owner. At least I was when I was back home in the US. And you don't know the paperwork, the hoops that the US makes you go through just to open a business, how they want to tax you, how they want to know everything about you. And here, they don't do that. And so businesses can succeed. And this is why Toys R Us After all of these decades, people believing back home in the US that this company is dead has thrived and continue to thrive. This is just an example of whether or not businesses, companies need to be in the market to thrive or to succeed. Because Toys R Us is a perfect example of this. So, people, in the end, you have to do your research. You have to understand how the market works. You have to understand how business works. Because if you don't, and if you don't do your research and you depend on these scumbags on YouTube, you're going to lose your money. So, in the end, people, get your money.